My whole life has been somewhat defined by an experience I had when I was younger. I think so often back to the time this happened. Nobody ever believed my story at the time, but I decided to write it now, for the world to see. It all began when I was 14 or so, when my family moved homes. My dad had been offered a job with better pay, and a month later, we had sold our house and rented an apartment in our new town. We moved during the summer, so it was simple starting at my new school. When the term began, I nervously walked from our apartment building to the school, which was rather close by. I hadn't yet had the chance to meet any local kids, so I didn't know anybody, and I was scared of having to make new friends all alone. I don't recall really speaking to anyone that morning. I was just too shy. I took my timetable in a slightly trembling hand and looked to see what my first class was. Math, in room 104. I checked the little school map handout I had been given. I looked at the map over and over, but I couldn't see my classroom number on there at all. By then, no staff were around me, and I began to panic. Where the hell was I supposed to go? I noticed on the layout of the building that there was a whole section to the right of the school that seemed to have plenty of classroom-sized rooms, but no numbers. The class numbers on the far left of the school were numbers 300 through 310. The center of the building had rooms designated in the 200 to 230 range. I decided my class, 104, well, it must logically be to the right. I walked down long corridors. Most of the other students were not new, so they had already made it to their classes, whilst I sat there contemplating my map. Because of this, the corridors were now deserted. In retrospect, I should have just found the help desk and asked them to give me directions, but I was so shy I decided I'd rather try and do it alone. Anyways, I followed the building layout, and at the end of an eerily quiet and long corridor, my passage was blocked by rather old-looking wooden double doors that didn't open when I pushed. This seemed wrong, like this part of the building was not meant to be entered. I played with the idea that someone had accidentally shut them, or maybe I just wasn't pushing hard enough. I rammed into the doors with my shoulder, and with a scraping sound of metal on wood, they opened. I realized then that I had broken the bolts on the other side of the door, which were brittle with rust. Horrified at having broken a door lock on my very first day, I was about to turn and run from the scene and ask someone to help me find my class. Obviously, I shouldn't be in this part of the school. The new corridor was old and extremely dusty. The lockers were all hanging open and unused. The faint smell of mold hung in the air. As I turned, I noticed the numbers painted on the glass windows of the doors along the corridor. The one nearest to me read 100. Perplexed, I checked my timetable again to assure myself that I had read my class number correctly. It was crystal clear. My room was 104, and just along this old dusty corridor apparently. I began to walk slowly, looking into the windows of each class as I passed. 100, empty. 101, empty. 102, empty, except for a plastic skeleton hanging in the corner by a pile of yellowing student lab coats. Still, this was enough to make me flinch. As I checked 103, which was also empty, I suddenly heard the voice of an adult man coming from the room just opposite, room 104. I peeked through the window. The class was full, except it wasn't what I expected to see. Sure, there was a teacher, wearing a brown suit and blue bow tie, and there were students, all focused on this teacher, sitting apart from one another on old-fashioned wooden tables. What made me pause, though, was what they were wearing. Kids didn't dress like that anymore. It looked like a classroom from an old film or TV show, when the teacher stood beside a blackboard dusty from chalk. Despite this oddity, I knocked on the door. Maybe the school just had a poor budget for this area. The teacher didn't notice my knocking, so I quietly opened the door and walked in. None of the students took their gaze away from the teacher, who also paid no attention to me. I awkwardly apologized for my lateness, citing that I had gotten lost. I then made my way over to the only free seat in the room and sat down. I felt my cheeks begin to burn with embarrassment. I must have interrupted the class, I thought. The teacher began his lesson a few seconds later rather casually. He said his name was Mr. Talori. He began to chalk equations on the board and got the class to solve them. The lesson was rather ordinary, except for the fact that no calculators were used. Whenever I raised my hand to answer a question, almost to try and win back favor from the teacher, he ignored it and always chose another student to answer the problem. The lesson ended abruptly after what felt like hours. By the end of it, I was bored and miserable. I just wanted to get home and complain about the way I was ignored. When I left the room, I felt pangs of hunger. I glanced at my watch and was shocked to see that the school day had already ended. A whole day of math? Horror. I had decided I hated this school. I walked slowly home, going over the day's events in my mind. It was all very weird, but I supposed I would get used to the school eventually. When I got home, my mother was talking on the home phone. Her face displayed confusion. She heard me come in and frowned when she saw me. She looked very angry and asked whoever was on the other end of the phone line to hold. Then she accused me of skipping school. Of course, confusion followed. I told her I had been in class all day, but apparently the school had phoned to say I wasn't in any lessons and hadn't seen me after I had collected my timetable. I told them I was in Mr. Talori's class in room 104 all day. I must have missed the register when I was late, I thought. My mom paused and told the school on the phone my story. Her expression froze after a few seconds, and then she looked at me rather worriedly. She hung up the phone and told me what the school had said. Mr. Talori had not worked at the school in 38 years. Apparently, room 104 was part of an abandoned section of the school that hadn't been used since a devastating school shooting nearly 40 years ago. The school thought I was playing some sort of sick joke. That night, I went on the web to find out if what the school had said was true. Quickly, I found an old newspaper article about the school massacre that had been archived. A nutjob had just walked into the school with several guns and gunned down a whole class of children and a teacher. He had blocked the doorway and shot everyone in just a single classroom. A random act of carnage. An old grainy photo showed the class where the murders happened, and I recognized it immediately. It was room 104. An obituary showed tributes to the dead and photos of all that had passed. I recognized them too. Mr. Talori and all the students I had spent a day with. My heart felt like it had stopped. I felt sick. I felt cold to my bones in that moment. After that day, I requested to change schools. Now, years later, I've written this, my account of what happened to me, which nobody ever believed. The reason, why now? Yesterday, I received a letter in the post. There was no address. It simply appeared through my letterbox. It was a class reunion invite, signed by my old teacher, Mr. Talori. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. As always, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have any criticisms on how I can make the videos better, or any thoughts about it in general, please be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. As well, in the description below the video, there will be links to all of my social media, including my Facebook, Gmail, Twitter, and Twitch accounts. If you guys want to chat, please be sure to send me a message on any of those. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Please be forewarned, though, that I tend to go on Facebook less than the others, so it may take me a little bit longer to respond to you. If you want to send in a story, or you have a story that you'd like to be read, please be sure to take a look at the description and send me a message on any one of those sites. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include the name of the story if it has one, the theme of the story if it has one as well, and how you would like to be credited in the video the story appears in, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. And please be sure to include as much detail as you are comfortable with, and make sure to follow proper grammar, at least a little bit. That way it will be easier for me to read, and it will also be long enough to put into a video. If you guys are curious about the music used in the video, it's always listed in the description in the order which it appears, and I have links to the artists as well. I usually use Doblato Studios and Miyuji, so that's usually what you're going to find there. If you're curious about the art in the video, my art guy Alan always does all of my art for the channel. He's a very good friend of mine, and I have links to all of his social media as well, so if you like his stuff, be sure to check him out. He does commissions as well, I'm pretty sure, so if you like it, you can definitely get some good quality products from him. I don't think there's too much new updates today, other than the fact that I'm very excited for the PlayStation 5 coming out, and I just ordered Pikmin 3 on the Switch, so hopefully that gets here soon. I've been waiting like 3 years for that because nobody bought a Wii U. So yeah, that's my news for now. Be sure to let me know how you guys are doing as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.